Makes
All
me
right.
makes me hungry for that.
So I have started recording the session. Do you want me to go ahead and pull up your PowerPoint?
That would be wonderful. Thank you. So a friend sent me a meme a few weeks ago before March started that said, "Are we just going to let March waltz right back into our lives after the way that it treated us last year?" And I don't know if you are feeling some of the things that I'm feeling, but that did make me laugh. And I love memes and I love funny things that we share with each other through the internet. I mean, obviously the internet, is also dark and troubling, but the internet has that way of unifying us through humor, even in difficult moments that can also break us apart. Bernie's mittens and all that. Humor is one of the ways that I find happiness and sharing it with others. The word happiness has never been Googled more than in 2020. And I think that's because we all went through this very unprecedented, historic moment in the last 12 months. I want to thank you for choosing to attend and come together to discuss this topic. I am new to Blackboard Collaborate, and I'm still learning to go back and forth between these slides. So I'm going to try going from the slides back to my face. Can I make my face large so they can see me, Erin, for a few minutes?
So if they'll switch you to speaker mode, which is that rectangle with the little three squares underneath it in the top right corner, then whoever is speaking is the largest person on the screen.
Okay, great. So I just want you to be able to connect with me for a few minutes, and then we can go back to the slides. It's so difficult on Zoom to feel connected. But obviously, I am a communication professor, as Erin mentioned. I'm also certified in emotional intelligence. But I did hear that little doubting voice in my head this morning, just whispering to me. It was actually quoting while you were sleeping the 1995 movie, if you saw it or remember it, and it just whispered to me, "What are you, the happiness guru?" And that's because I'm not an expert. I'm not all things happiness. I don't pretend to have a PhD in happiness, but I do want to thank you for letting me explore this with you alongside you, because I think it's a very timely, a very personal, and a very important topic for us to discuss, not only as people who are working from home and family members and North Carolinians, but as educators and professionals working together in this important work. In the chat box, you see a link I posted there. That is to a handout. And if you want to go and grab that, you can download it and take some notes, or you can just take some physical notes with your hands. And that, I find, it helps me, keeps me happier in Zoom meetings, just to be a little bit more mobile. So I'm going to take you, if you still can see my screen, I'm going to share my screen now to, I'm going to click moderator, share content. I'm walking through this. Um, I want to take you to a collaborative question. Share screen. And I'm going to ask you this question, and let's answer it together. Can everybody see that screen now?
We can't see it right now.
Okay.
Let's see. Did you
Share.
get
I didn't hit share yet.
that? Trips me
Share.
up.
Well, I hit share and share entire screen. Yes, share the entire screen. Okay. Do you see it now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to make it full screen. So the question is, in what small ways do you boost happiness throughout your workday? So it's going to ask you to text it or to respond to that link. You can do either one, and it's just our way of seeing what your thoughts are here. We were going to do it through the poll feature, but that's not open-ended. So this way we can kind of see what your thoughts are on happiness here. I love it. Coffee. What else you got?
So I
Surprise.
obviously can't.
That
I can't
that's
read
good.
today, and I didn't see what I was supposed to text first to be able to do it. So,
That's okay. Run. Okay, some exercise. That's good. Read. Good. Some of these are going to be like relaxing answers or fun, energetic answers. They're all going to be personal answers. I'm surprised nobody said childcare. Uh, Play music. Good. Walking your dog. Short breaks. That's important. Good. Call and check on someone. That's encouraging. That's very good. Dance. I love it. Play music, especially have a snack, maybe a song that you like. Very good. All right, a couple more seconds. Call a trusted colleague. I like that too. I like making a phone call and talking to somebody on the way to work. Working from home has sort of changed these habits, like what your workday looked like before versus our workday now. Seeing people before, when we were in the office, maybe popping your head in to see someone and saying hi. Now it might be a phone call or a text. Yeah, very good. Cartwheels. That's I cannot do that, but somebody else that can might enjoy that. Okay, very good. It's all very good. So I'm going to go back. I stopped sharing screen. Let's see if we can go back to, let's go back to the slides, Erin, if you'll help me do that.
all right.
I asked this question of my husband to see what he would say. My husband went to work at home for the first time in his entire life in January of 2020. So if you think about that timeline, and his personality is not naturally suited to working from home. This is not his gig, and he he has a hard time with working from home, but they really talked him into it with this bait that he would get to travel a lot in 2020. Ha ha ha. So that didn't go as planned. And I asked him, how did you keep it together? How did you really enjoy working from home? How did you find happiness? And he thought about it for a long time, and he said the way he found happiness working from home was to take short breaks and think about trips he wanted to take with us, with his family in the future, and then to look at a map or look at some websites and start planning those things out, taking some notes on them, just saving some ideas, and having that future thing to look forward to really helped him. In thinking about his physical office, I started thinking about the things he has around his workspace and how they really infuse positivity there. And his office is a really like a little museum, a tiny museum of his explorations. A little memento from his trip to India, a postcard from DC, little things he's taken from his trips that remind him of those things. That makes him happy and reminds him of things he wants to do in the future. Our happiness is really personal. Sean Anker writes in Happiness Advantage. He is a happiness researcher from Harvard. He discusses each person's happiness as subjective well-being. It's through thorough research, reflection, and self-awareness, we are the best judges of how happy we are and why. Last March, 12 months ago, our happiness took a real hit. A Qualtrics survey of 44% of employed working adults said their mental health declined during the pandemic. I'm sure that you can relate to that. We had to find new places to work from home, new setups. I loved some of these memes of working from home. Maybe you've seen these. Working with my cat at home has been very interesting. I'm sure you've seen cats pop up in some of your synchronous work meetings. I loved the images I've seen of how people have turned ironing boards into desks, and the very desks, the standing work desks. They've used their playpens in all sorts of creative ways. Um, we've had to adapt, and the adaptation has helped us in some ways, but it's also hurt our happiness. Let's think about how this happiness has taken a hit in two ways: change and isolation. So change has a real impact on us, and something many of us haven't thought about before. But change is physically uncomfortable to the brain. There's a reason why we like to park in the same place. We like to sit in the same seat. If you do a staff meeting at work, you tend to gravitate towards the same type of seating every time, or you like the same type of routine. It's because the brain likes to do things the same way. If they have to do something a new way, the brain uses new energy, and the brain likes to conserve energy to save that energy for what it knows will eventually be change and adaptation later down the road. Also, this feeling of predictability gives us a feeling of control when we know the world around us has so many out of control features to it. So change is something that oftentimes we avoid, whether that's consciously or subconsciously. The American Psychological Association did an intense survey and study on workplace change and found that it has real impact. Employees impacted by change are 4 times more likely to have physical health ailments, 2 times more likely to suffer chronic stress, and 3 times more likely to look for a new job. During the pandemic, thinking about isolation, 4 in 10 adults reported symptoms of anxiety or depressive disorder. And countless studies have found that social relationships are the best guarantee of heightened well being, lowered stress. It is an antidote for depression and a prescription for high performance. So during the pandemic, we had massive change and massive isolation. So our brain was in overdrive in regards to change. We had to change the way we work. We had to change the way our kids were educated. We had to change the way we took care of ourselves in terms of health. And then we had to change our everyday tiny routines. Like I couldn't go to Walmart the same way I went to Walmart. I couldn't go to the grocery store the same way I went to the grocery store. Even the way I cooked had to change because I might be out of certain ingredients. So there was a lot of change that my brain had to face. And then I was isolated from the people who gave me a lot of security and a lot of insulation against anxiety and depression because I couldn't just go hang out with them anymore. So those two things really took a big hit in terms of our happiness. And our students felt that too. First time enrollment in community colleges is down 21%. Mental health and student services are in great demand. If you are in that area of the college, you are probably really feeling that. Matthew Brown of Clemson did a study in Science News revealing mental health among college students is particularly facing struggle right now. Those who are under 25 and those who are low income are particularly faced with mental health challenges. So this is a timely topic. And we're going to look quickly at what and why of happiness at work. And we're also going to look at habits and hallmarks of happiness. Then we're going to look at sharing our happiness in our everyday encounters. But I also want to share something a little out of the box with you. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Pantone color of the year. So Pantone is a universal color matching system. And for years, Pantone has released a color of the year. And this gives retailers and designers and architects sort of an idea of what the big colors are going to be for the next year. And it's just sort of a fun thing most of the time. But Pantone also takes its cues for choosing colors of the year. It takes its cues from society and the world. And colors convey meaning. The color is both a reflection of culture and global society and a prediction. So I want to show you what the Pantone color of the year, sometimes they choose 2 colors. And this year was one of the years that they chose to use 2 colors. And so I want to show you the 2 colors and see what you think that means. So in the chat box, as you are watching this, chat about what you think and what you're feeling as you see these colors conveyed in these images. What do you think Pantone is trying to say about where the world is in regards to its happiness? Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so let's just go back here and got to go back to seeing the chat. I see a few answers here. I got to go back to seeing them. Okay, good answers. Okay, so I'm seeing gray and happy yellow. Yes, so those were the colors. Happiness, bright, sunny, happy days are coming. Hope, resilience, energy, happy, warm. Yes, those are great colors together. Bright yellow standing out against a dull gray. Great. So let's go back to the slides. This is what Pantone has to say about why it chose its colors together. You guys are tracking absolutely with what Pantone has to say about why it chose its colors. Pantone said that the marriage of the two colors together, I may have to have Aaron do this quickly back and forth
You
unless
got it?
no, I see it now. I'm just still learning to navigate quickly back and forth between these. There we go. Okay. It said a marriage of color conveying a message of strength and hopefulness that is both enduring and uplifting. So that's exactly what they were aiming for. So it is sort of reflecting where society is in that it needs hope and it needs endurance and it needs some happiness. What is happiness? Well, as I mentioned, happiness is personal. So research call it subjective well-being. Barbara Friedrichsen drilled down a little bit because happiness is a feeling and said it's related to 10 positive emotions: joy, gratitude, serenity, interest, hope, pride, amusement, inspiration, awe, and love. Okay, so it is a feeling. Getting a little bit more of that understanding filled out. We know that happiness, when we have it, its success research shows there's a connection between when you're happy, then you have more successful marriages. When you're happy, you have better health. When you're happy, you have better friendships and you're more creative and you do better in business. But this is where it gets a little bit more difficult to pin down. When you start pursuing happiness, really wanting happiness and going after happiness, it tends to backfire. Edward Diener, the professor of happiness at the University of Illinois, said the expectation that one should be happy is a frequent cause of unhappiness. Sean Aker researches this a little bit more deeply in his book and says that most people think happiness comes after goal attainment, but the opposite is most true. Presently happy people possess resources needed to reach their goals. So I think in reflecting on this in my life, I had to kind of take it back a little bit to when we studied the Declaration of Independence. What does the Declaration of Independence teach us when we're young? Anybody want to tell me in the chat box? What do we hear when we're in history class when we're little? That we have unalienable rights, and one of them is the what? Pursuit of happiness. So it's almost like we get ingrained in us that we need to chase after happiness. And so, okay, so if I set a goal for myself that if I just lose this much weight, I'll be happy, or if I just get this job, I'll be happy, if I get promoted to this, I'll be happy, if I get married and have kids, I'll be happy, if I graduate with this degree, I'll be happy. And what happens is we keep sort of adding another goal and another goal, and we never really achieve where we want to achieve and find that happiness. And what is more true of happiness is that when we find happiness where we are, where we presently are, we find more peace and more contentment where we are, then we find more resources in that contentment to then reach the goals that we want. So it's very reflexive. In this way, happiness is a little bit mysterious. I don't know if you know Nathan Pyle, but I love Strange Planet. I am a beacon of joy. Uh, this pursuing the disposition is somewhat difficult. This quote by Robin Daniels, though, in all of my looking around, probably captures the essence of what it truly is. And I think I could kind of like live in this quote for a little while and still not fully digest it all. We can prepare for happiness, such as by guarding our integrity in all aspects of our health, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and by full hearted devotion to a worthy aim. But happiness eludes full hearted pursuit. It is often something that comes as a gift, unbidden, unexpected. Our role is threefold: to be thankful, to be opportunist and glad acceptance, and to show by attitude and action that we want to be worthy of what or whom we've been given to cherish. So the longer I sat through that quote and really thought about it, the more I'm taking away happiness isn't something that looks like a gerbil on a wheel or a hamster on a wheel that is just constant. If I just keep going, I'm going to find that happiness. Happiness is much more of a mindfulness exercise of the hamster that's sitting in his little nest and just seems very happy to be sitting there with his food. Um, Not that the hamster doesn't enjoy being on the wheel every now and then, but there are some things that we see here in this quote, some characteristics and some hallmarks and habits that I think put us in a position to make us happier people and to be in a position of the reception of those things that make us happy. So that moves us, yeah, some great comments there that I'm seeing, some great interaction with that. Um, so that moves us sort of into this hallmarks of happy. I don't know if you know some people that are just happy people that seem to be so resilient, and it makes you think, what is it that makes that person just really able to bounce back and really able to deal with life? Um, I have somebody like that. She's sort of an honorary grandmother in my life, and she has been married a few times. One of her husbands had severe depression, sadly took his own life. Then she got married again. That husband had terminal cancer and passed away within 6 months of her getting married. And she has just been through so many ups and downs. And she's just so grateful and so connected to her community, and she gives back. And every time I talk to her, I just think, how do I learn from you? How do I become more like you? Um, she really embodies some of these hallmarks. Um, Social. Epicurus said, of all the means to ensure happiness throughout the whole of life, the most important is the acquisition of friends. William Blake, the poet, said, the bird a nest, the spider a web, man friendship. I love that. The analysis of 150 studies of socially connected people said we live longer when we have a good network of friends. That's true, and we learn that in the communication studies. We see that over and over and over, that your immune system is better when you have a good connection of people in your life. I think introverts and extroverts were not fully understood during the pandemic, because I saw a lot of memes about introverts and extroverts, and how introverts were very happy during the pandemic, and I think that the introverts kind of got a bad rap for like hating people, and so they were somehow um, doing just fine during the pandemic. Both introverts and extroverts do love people. I think the misunderstanding there is that extroverts, in addition to loving people, need social situations to gain energy replenishment, whereas introverts need isolation um, to get that energy replenishment. In terms of socialness at work, I know what's worked for me has been joining a book club at work, and that being a very fluid, very low pressure book club. We read a book together, but it's just casual, and we pop in and we discuss things that we're reading. And if a rabbit trail happens, a rabbit trail happens. But it's really just meant to be fun and stimulating and social. My boss has given us options for other social things, trivia, that kind of thing, over Zoom, and I like it. It doesn't fill all the void that I'm feeling, but I do think it's worth exploring if that does help us with that social need that we have to be happy. Gratefulness creates a reaction in our brains that helps to protect us against depression. It does give us a release of serotonin and dopamine. One thing I found that was a practical suggestion in terms of boosting our gratitude was something called the gratitude walk. Just taking a walk outside with the intention of during this walk, I'm going to reflect on the things I'm grateful for. So during this walk, when I see something I think is beautiful, I'm just going to be grateful that I saw that. And when I see a beautiful bird, I'm just going to be grateful that I was able to observe that. And um, I'm going to marvel at that, and I'm going to really take in the beauty that I'm seeing, and I'm going to reflect on the things in my life that are going well. And the studies that have gone into that see such positive benefits from being in nature, but also in our personal life. It kind of combines those things together. Now, when we talk about habits, I could go on and on about these habits, but I would encourage you to get the book, Happiness Advantage, and also Emotional Intelligence 2.0 if you want to go into a deep dive here. But I'll talk about a couple of them more specifically. There are 7 habits that Happiness Advantage goes into. I'm just going to mention a few here. One is infuse positivity into your surroundings. Um, Being outside, uh, having nature in our surroundings, even inside. People recuperating from surgery needed less pain medication and shorter hospital stays when they were around nature and viewing nature. Your workspace should be a personal reflection of what makes you happy and keeps you positive. Mine certainly does, even though it is a shared space. And even though if I turned my camera, I told Aaron this yesterday, if you turned my camera, you would see a lot of toys on one side, and a lot of craft items from one kid. But, my little tiny corner of the world, I have, this is Mr. Rogers here, who's like a personal hero. And I've got, some funny magnets of places I visited. I've got, this is like a personal little motto, because I'm, speech teacher. This is enthusiasm, and I have some things around me that keep me happy and positive. Um, just look around your workspace and think about adding things that just do nothing but make you happy. Meditation, prayer, exercise, these things boost our happiness. Conscious acts of kindness, focusing on something to look forward to really matters. My mom used to say to me, always have something in your planner you're looking forward to. And it turns out she was right. One study showed that just thinking about watching a movie you're looking forward to boosts your endorphins by 27%. And then flexing a signature strength, trying to do things at work and at home and in your community that really showcase something that you're good at, shows a commitment to your emotional intelligence, and also makes you feel good because you know you're going to do well. Okay, so this brings us to another question I'm going to ask and see what you have to say about this. So get ready to text this answer. Why do you believe happiness matters to what we do in a college and who we serve? Why does this matter? Our discussion of happiness. Sure, it's touchy-feely. Sure, it's good for our mental health and work balance. But practically, why does happiness matter to what we do and who we serve? Better culture translates into more successful students. Yes, we feed off each other's emotions. Yes. Our mood has an effect on those around us. Happy students are returning students. Our attitudes permeate into everything. They need our hope or a light. Oh, that's very good. Yeah. We should be a positive place for our students. Man, isn't that true? Um, this is this is this is deeper than we think, huh? I'll give it just one more second. I think you really hit it. I don't think that I think you guys could probably at this point teach the course. I mean, you guys nailed it. Um, our happiness really matters. I used to say when I was a department head, I was a department chair for a while, and I stepped down when my son was about 9 months old because it just got to that point where I didn't feel like I could give all of the attention to my employees that um, I just felt like I couldn't be everything to them that they needed and also be everything to my two children that they needed. And I had a wonderful person who could step in and be a department chair. And it was a difficult decision to make, but I'm glad that I made that decision. And before I stepped down, one of the things I really tried to infuse to the newer faculty that I had hired is happy teachers equal happy students. It matters. It really matters. Your happiness matters, and the staff happiness matters. Sometimes we really forget that. Regarding the benefits of good customer service relationships, student customer satisfaction directly correlates to larger enrollments. Happy students stay in school, so retention rates remain high. Happy students tell their high school friends, so recruitment numbers are higher. More students generate more tuition revenue in the current economic reality. This tells us that service excellence must be threaded throughout higher education operations and practices. So, and then here's some data. 24% of college students will leave because of the perception they were treated poorly or received bad service. 20% will leave because of the perception the college didn't care about them. So, shared happiness matters to enrollment and retention, number one. Hey, if a student feels like they're not cared about, they're going to leave. That's just the reality of it. Um, that's a really big percentage when you think about why a student leaves college. I really would have thought, looking at that research, that high of a number would have been attributed to other factors like just money or just the difficulty of the content. But for that high of a number to just be attributed to not feeling like the college cared about them, that is really significant. And our happiness or our unhappiness conveys powerfully in our daily interactions. Um, it is contagious. Studies show that three strangers who meet, the, of the three who meet, the most emotionally expressive person transmits their mood to the others within 2 minutes. Also, smiling affects how we speak. Listeners can identify the type of smile that that person is smiling based on sound alone. And finally, we know that we can predict the outcome of a conversation based on the first 3 minutes of a conversation. So um, we know that it's important when we start off a conversation, when we're talking about customer service, we need to start off well and to start off with a strong vibe of happiness and caring. In customer service training, we call this starting off with yes or starting off with the hope of help, because our mood is contagious and our emotions are catching to the other person. And some of you really nailed that in that question. Finally, the college staff, and this is more just my personal conviction, but the college staff really serve as student first educators. Um, you know that phrase, first responders, that we use so often when we're referring to we're referring to I'm sorry, first responders with EMS and firefighters, and it's a really an honorable term we use for them. I really feel that in regards to college staff, that it's not just faculty who are the educators, that the college staff are really the first educators that students interact with, because example is the school of mankind. And you are the ones who are serving the students and interacting with the students and setting the example of how to show them how to interact with the public, many of them. And we serve such diverse students in North Carolina community colleges. I know this, you know this, and I really think it cannot be said enough that the work that you do is honorable. The faculty and the staff, sometimes, at least in my college experience, sometimes the faculty and staff do not understand each other as much as they should, and do not have as much maybe respect is not the right word, but as much empathy for each other as they should. Sometimes they're kind of like separate silos, and they really don't have as much understanding of how the other half lives. Um, and the faculty think of themselves as the educators, but I really think it's important to remember as staff that the way you interact with them, you're really doing important work, and you are serving the mission of the North Carolina community college system and setting that great example of public service and public good. And your public service skills enhance that happiness transfer. Every customer is an opportunity. Jeffrey Gitmer shares in his book 9 things that really irritate us about customer service, and I think that if you want to share in the chat something that irritates you about a customer service interaction, probably will line up with one of these 9, because if you've ever had a frustrating customer service interaction, it probably lines up with one of these 9. So 9 things that irritate us: poor response to a need or a question, poor attitude, poor service, inability to get the problem solved. You have to sit there and listen to why the person who's supposed to be helping you can't help you. Non-caring people, the inability to reach a live person. Doesn't that drive you nuts when you're like, just touch this number to get here, and then touch this number to get here, and touch this number to get here? Doesn't that drive you crazy? And then the inability to get help once you get a live person. And then finally, the attitude of, I'm doing you a favor to help you. Um, that's generally not our attitude in higher education. But sometimes I think when we get really tired from overwork and over service, it can kind of get close to that. Probably not on purpose, but maybe just out of exhaustion. He has a great list of forbidden phrases that, if you look at my recommended resources, you might want to go back and get the book. But you in your own departments, your own divisions, might want to come up with some forbidden phrases to try not to use to improve your own happiness transfer when you are interacting with students. He encourages us to resolve the problem all the way, not help the student halfway and then drop it. And then he gives the most fantastic, I think the most fantastic, he calls it the secret tone test. He calls it the grandma test. So he says, if you have a phrase you use in customer service that you're not sure how it's going to come across, put grandma at the end of it. But we're in the South, so you might want to put Nana at the end of it, or Mimi. So I'll give you an example. I don't handle that, Grandma. It's our policy, Grandma. What is this in reference to, Grandma? Sorry about that, Grandma. So there are lots of phrases that we use every day that irritate customers, and we probably have no idea that they irritate them. But if we insert grandma at the end of it, you can kind of get that, like, okay, yeah, it does kind of not sound right. And if we add that at the end of it, we can kind of get that vibe a little bit better. So that is his best practical advice to sort of sorting out those phrases and how they sound. So we looked quickly at the what and why, some habits and hallmarks, and then the sharing of happiness in our encounters. The happier we are at work, the more positivity we transmit to our colleagues, teammates, and clients, which can eventually tip the emotion of an entire work team and eventually create happiness habits and a happiness culture that become the baseline of that entire team. And when somebody joins this team and they say, oh, this team is just really happy, this is a happy team, or this is a really positive team, or really helpful team, or really collaborative team, that happens because over time, these happiness habits and happiness traits really do take root and take control. So I've shared these recommended resources with you as well, and that is at the bottom of the handout I shared on the link. I wanted to end just a couple of minutes early. Number one, because that always makes me happy when I'm in a presentation, but also because I wanted to leave some time just for questions from anybody who wanted to ask a question of me in regards to anything I've said or in regards to communication, um, anything at all that came to your mind, a rabbit trail. I wanted to open it up.
Feel free to type it in the chat box or unmute yourself.
And thank you for sharing some of those quotes I really enjoyed. Um, that was really great. I really enjoyed reading that, and I'm still enjoying reading that. If anybody wants to elaborate on that as well, that was pretty cool. What do you find are some of the difficult challenges to your happiness um, in 2021, maybe versus 2020?
I know for me, it's almost, well, there's still that uncertainty, and that causes us to be anxious, and which then makes us unhappy. And that it's almost like I find myself being like, oh, we're almost at the end. Oh, but maybe we're not. So, yeah, and like Krista said, there's still the concern. And then I know some people are even more concerned about what's going to happen once everyone starts opening up again. And so, even though we're supposedly at the end of it almost, there's still a lot of uncertainty about what the next 6 months or whatever looks like.
Yeah, yeah. Um, one of the great things I read early on that the Gottman Institute posted was an article that said the feeling you have right now is grief in regards to the pandemic. And it talked a lot about anticipatory grief and collective anticipatory grief, and how every time sort of the goalpost was moved, we we went through a grieving process because you're trying to get to some sort of closure, and you're trying to get back to what you felt like was life before. And every time that was moved, that was going through waves of grief and adaptation. And then, of course, the process of adaptation, it mirrors the process of grief. And so I don't know that we as a society, especially American society, is not great at emotions to start with, particularly the vulnerable emotions. But I don't know that we have had um, a hot minute to pause and process the grief and the anxiety that that's going on with it, for sure. A lot of not being able to interact with students in person makes it very difficult. Feeling of loneliness because you're distanced from normal friends and coworkers. Yeah, yeah. Very, very tough. Very tough. And of course, Zoom fatigue. I don't know how you guys are feeling about that, but the research is just starting to trickle out and deepen about Zoom fatigue. But it's a real, it will be studied for the next 10 years in depth, but it's sincere and it is affecting us for sure. There are things that can help mitigate it, but I think that it's also something that is an aspect of what we're feeling and our students are feeling. So after the presentation, is there something that you would say, okay, I'm going to try to do more of this, or I'm going to try to see something a little differently? What do you think you might try to do a little differently? You might try to do more of this, or you might try to see something differently. Anybody have an idea, something they want to share? Create more positivity? Good. We definitely have more of an impact on other people than we realize. I don't know if you saw the sidebar about how every more positive friend you have creates a ripple effect. Like that makes you 9% more likely to be happy and positive. And then that just keeps going down the line. I noticed in reflecting on myself, one thing that I did, and I didn't even know that I was necessarily doing it, but was trying to. I saw some of you say you would listen to music during the day to boost your happiness. I found myself listening to some comedians that I really like. Because of I like humor. And so I found myself listening to Jim Gaffigan, and on Netflix in the evening I watched comedians in cars getting coffee. Um, and I didn't even know I was really doing this. I had to reflect a little bit on why, but I think that that has a lot to do with my personality and had a lot to do with trying to keep my positive emotions in balance with my sad emotions. That I was feeling very sad, and I kept feeling a push towards wanting to keep positive emotions in my life and not having as many friends who would normally do that, who would normally make me laugh and tell me stories and have inside jokes. And so I found that just having funny podcasts or um, listening to stand up that I liked or something like that kind of helped me mitigate that a little bit. I also moved during the pandemic. I don't recommend doing that, but that was a particularly difficult challenge for me. That my family moved about 8 weeks prior to the pandemic, and to a place where we did not know anyone and did not have any friends. And so that created a very real challenge to our happiness, and especially to I am an extrovert and like to have a lot of people in my life. So that was very, very challenging and continues to be a challenge. I like to have a lot of things on my calendar. I like to be involved in a lot of clubs and organizations and committees, and it was like the world stopped. Um, and so I really had to fight through that. Well, I think we are coming to the close of this, and I just want to challenge you all to feel free to use my email address and reach back out to me if I can answer a question, if I can share slides, share research, continue the conversation. I am a community college colleague in our system of the 58 schools, and I'm not going anywhere. So I want to just throw that out there to you that I don't plan on not continuing to be a resource to you down the road if something comes up and you think, what was that thing that she said that one time, and I might be able to use that when I'm doing my own presentation. Please don't feel shy to reach back out and say something, or ask me a question. That's a very good comment, Cindy, about decorating the office in bright colors. I think that's a really smart idea. But thank you for all of your comments and your interaction on the polls. That really helps everybody to be even more engaged at the end. Um, yeah, that's a good idea about empowerment walls. I think our surroundings do greatly impact us. I mean, they always have, but especially in times of need. Thank you so much for coming. I'll give it back to Erin.